Hello, and welcome to Redesigning the Math Curriculum with Alta, Corequisite Mapping, Implementation, and Training. I'm John Britch, a marketing nerd at Knewton. You've entered this webinar muted, but please use the question field on the GoToWebinar toolbar to type in your question, and then later on during the Q&A segment, we'll also, if you want, you can raise your hand and we'll open up your microphone. So our agenda today, we have 45 minutes together. It's 35 minutes of sort of session, our discussion, and then 10 minutes of Q&A. And the session is broken into these three components, talking about corequisite mapping, implementation, and support. And you see these questions here. And to help us answer these questions, we have Dr. Becky Menning, Amber Shafi, and Sarah Viner. And we're going to let our facilitators introduce themselves. So Becky, can you kick us off?
Absolutely. So again, I am Becky Menning. I joined the Knewton ranks as a content developer last November after 10 years as a faculty member at Ivy Tech Community College, Northern Indiana. While at Ivy Tech, I was an adjunct, I was a full-time faculty member and a department chair. While there, I also was a big part of the co-rec implementation and design team for our non-STEM pathway, specifically quantitative reasoning. I helped train faculty across the state in professional development with co-recs, and I've also spoke nationally on co-requisites after I finished my dissertation on co-requisites in mathematics for higher education. Amber?
Yep, I'm Amber. I'm a solutions architect, which is basically just a fancy name for an implementation manager in the northern part of the country. I joined Knewton in fall of 2017 after 9 years in a traditional publishing space, mostly focused on developmental math as a discipline.
And I think that leaves me. I'm Sarah Viner. I'm the instructional development specialist here at Knewton. I came to Knewton from another education technology startup and previously was in the classroom teaching 10th grade, middle school and preschool before that. And my focus specifically is on the pedagogy and best practices when our clients are using Alta. So excited to dig in today.
Super, thank you. And just a note, this is something of a sequel to an earlier webinar we did on redesign with co-requisites, planning and practice, where we talked more about the educational philosophy, sort of best practices. We had more sharing of stories, one instructor or two, Emporium, etc. So what I'm going to do is you're going to get a link to the video for this conference, but I'll also include a link to that earlier YouTube video in case you'd like to watch that. So let us that being said, let us move on to the corequisite mapping portion of our agenda. Becky?
Thank you, John. So in this time, we're going to talk all about corequisite mapping, what it means, why we do it, why it's important. So let's go ahead and start with the first slide, please, John, and talk about what is it. So this is just the kind of an overarching picture. What is corequisite backwards mapping and why does it matter? Well, if you think about a co-requisite, no matter how you set it up, you're going to basically have two courses. They might be connected in one time period. They might be two separate times. It doesn't matter. We need those two courses to flow seamlessly. We need them to be connected, not just with, a nice flow, but content specific. If students don't see relevance in the content they are seeing in the support course, they're not going to stick with it. It needs to say, hey, we're doing this in the support course. Look how it translates to the college level course. It is super important. In my beginnings at Ivy Tech, our first co-rec, we didn't do that. We had two separate courses and it was horrible. We lost all kinds of students because it wasn't relevant. Then we did some backwards mapping and we made sure those two courses were connected. Then students could see, oh, it's important that I'm doing concepts A and B because I need them to be successful when I transition to the next course. So backwards mapping allows us to seamlessly fit the content for both the co-rec course, the support course, and that college level course. So the basic idea behind the process is we start with the college level topics. It's important because, well, all of our, whether you're talking about stats, quantitative reasoning, college algebra, trigonometry, it doesn't matter the course. We have specific learning objectives or topics that need to be taught in that course. We have them, right? It's part of the legislature, it's part of the transfer agreements, whatever. So we start with those topics and then we back map. What do students need to know to be successful with those particular topics? Sometimes, math builds. So sometimes the prereq topics have already been taught, and that's okay. We call those reinforceable skills, and we work them through the system. So let's go to the next slide, please, John. Knewton here offers backwards mapping process for you, and I do the majority of the correct mappings. So why do we do this? I was a faculty member for 10 years. I know how busy you are, right? Even on the days when I thought I've got one class and nothing else scheduled, I ended up in 3 impromptu meetings and 6 students at my door. I never got anything done. There was never a big chunk of time for me to sit down and dig through content and figure out where it needed to be and where it needed to come from. So we know our Alta courses, and we know math. Well, I know math. So if you give me your topics, I can take the time that you don't already have and map that for you. This is a starting point. This isn't, we're going to create the course for you and then that's what you're stuck with. No. This is a conversational starting point. So there's a lot of different ways we can do this. I can do the mapping. I can meet with faculty and say, what do you like? What do you not like? We can cut, we can put things in, we can do all of that. I've done that before. We can also just go straight to, we map it, we can build the Alta course for you, and then you can go in and tweak from there. Again, this is not meant to override your power as a faculty and what your course looks like. We just want to do the hard part for you and allow you to do minor tweaks later to make your course better. So what do we need to do this? Next slide, please.
Certainly. Let me just, for those of you who are just joining us, if you have any questions, please type them in the question field, and we'll either answer them as Becky is speaking or save them for the Q&A segment at later in the session.
Thanks, John. So as you might have already noticed, I think I've said objectives or topics like 14 times. And that's basically what we need. How I get those, it doesn't matter. If you have a syllabus with your objectives, you can just send the syllabus and we can extract those objectives from there, put it in a spreadsheet and map. If you want to just send us, a list of topics, hey, these are the basic topics that I teach, we can map from there. It's also, I know that as a faculty, every semester, I had a nice 1-page document of every week and what I was teaching in those weeks. If you give me those, I can map it week by week so that you don't have to create a new one of those. We will give you every step of the way what you're teaching when. Again, you already have enough to do. You don't need to recreate the wheel of something you've already done. We will do that for you. So some examples of what this looks like. And the more specific your information, the more drilled down the course will be. So this is actually, these are all snapshots of things I've actually been given. So somebody sent me their syllabus and they had these chunks of, broken down into topics and then piece by piece. So you'll notice the first 3, solving equations, solving absolute value equations, it's kind of breaking it down into specifics. If you just give me linear equations, is that graphing? Is that solving? Is that writing? There's a lot of ways we can go with that. And if I don't know, I put everything in there and kind of overload it because I don't know what you need. I'd rather give you too much than not enough. So the more specific you can be in your topics that you give us, the more specialized we can create your course and your mapping. So we can get it from, topics on your syllabus, or the next slide, somebody actually sent in a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet was fabulous, and it just listed these topics. Now, you all may know what G, S, N, and V stand for. I don't have any idea. But this was a list of topics that came from the instructor. Okay, so broad with domain and range. I don't know if that's linear or quadratic or, just functions in general. But this was what I was given, and so I mapped to these topics. Obviously, this is a snapshot, not the whole thing. So it doesn't really matter how you give it to us. It's one of those, whatever you already have, send it. Don't create work for yourself to get us topics that's not needed. And then I talked about, next slide, please, the week-by-week schedule. This one I did just, I think last week I did this mapping. Personally, I loved it because as a faculty member, I can visualize what's happening on a day, how many assignments or how many learning objectives a student can really handle in a week. So this was really a great way for me to kind of think through from a faculty member side and a content developer side and kind of put it together. So if I had a wish, I would say I wished all of them came in this form. I think my mappings would probably be a bit better. But
Hi,
that's
Becky.
yeah.
A question has come in. What is the charge for this backwards mapping?
There is no charge. This is a free service offered by Knewton to help you, just get ready for your courses. Yeah, we do this for free.
Super, thank you.
But if you wanted to send me, a card in the mail as a thank you, I wouldn't say no.
I think a gentle kiss on the forehead.
Yeah, or a pat on the back, anything is that. A high five. Okay, anyway, what not to give. So I always like to say, these are the great things that I can do. You send me something like this, and yes, I got this also last week. I can't do anything with this. I first went through and said, well, maybe they listed the textbook somewhere so I would know like what course it was and I could maybe find it online. No course name, no book name, just 2, 8, and 3, 4. I should know what that is. So it took me about 3 days to track down the right person to find the faculty member to figure out what these topics are. So just think about it. You're talking to somebody who, I don't have one math textbook in my house and I work from home. So even if you said, hey, it's this textbook, unless I can find that textbook online, it does me no good. So just what not to wear. Let's actually go through and look at some examples of what I've done. So this is actually one of the very first mappings that I did as a Knewton member here. And so just to kind of show what this is, in the very first column, which would be column A, those were the topics given to me from the faculty member. Then in the next two, so columns B and C, those are the intermediate algebra. It's the assignment name and the learning objective name. So this, and the reason there's numbers there, like the 6.3.1, that helps our builders. So I map it, and if you want us to build your course, it goes to another group, and then they build it from the mapping, and those numbers are required to build. So then in the last column, column D, these would be the prerequisite support. So if you had 2 separate courses, this would be things that you would do in that support course. We can build it in one Alta course. We can build it in 2 separate Alta courses, whatever you need for your particular situation. And again, this, if after I would create this, if you're just say you trust us, you'll tweak it later, we can go straight to the builder, or we can jump on a call just kind of like this and talk through what's happening and make tweaks from there before it gets built. And the last example on the next slide, we had a faculty member who actually took our table of contents and highlighted the learning objectives she wanted. So she didn't worry about us doing that part. She just sent us, she scanned it in, sent us the table of contents for our Alta course with what she wanted. So column A here is the Alta assignment. The next one would be the Alta learning objectives. And then the third column is the support course. So not every mapping looks the same. It depends on the format we get it in and what faculty members want. So it's very common for us to have a conversation either live or via email to make sure that we get this course mapped and built to your exact specifications. And that is backwards mapping.
Super. Now we're going to turn to implementation and what does an implementation in Alta look like? And Amber will help us out with this section.
Okay, so we've heard from Becky. We've heard all about what the backward mapping process is. So now you've got this pretty little course, but that is really just the beginning. What's next is implementation, of course. You've got a full team to support you and your students every step of the way, not just in the course building process. So what does successful implementation look like to Knewton? That means we want you to get the most out of Alta. We want to continually partner with each one of you and your students to iterate on the platform, to improve, and to provide data and documentation all along the way. We'll provide resources, we provide the support, no matter the size or the scale of the adoption. You have a full team of nerds sort of at your beck and call to help you make sure you're successful from course building to transitioning to the next semester. So, what does this look like? So let me lay it out for you. Go ahead and click on the next slide, John. I'll lay it out in sort of a timeline. So this is sort of a hypothetical timeline, but I think it really illustrates well sort of what the process is throughout the year. So right about now is the time that we are working with faculty to align on course goals. We have a consultation around, what does a successful implementation look like to you? What policies do we need to set? What sort of decisions around settings can we make in regards to the course? So that's all happening right about now. And if it's, then we go into the course mapping and building process that Becky has just described, and we put together these courses. We typically just need a couple of weeks to get those turned back over to you. Then we want to let you have a little bit of summer downtime, go relax, spend some time on the beach, and then we would expect to reconvene sometime midsummer just to talk about which course coordinators need courses. Are we going to copy this out to the masses? Are we going to integrate this into your LMS system? That's sort of when all of that happens in order to prepare us to train the faculty right before the start of the term. Training to us is a combination of in-person and via web in meetings like this as needed. And Sarah's going to explain a lot more about our virtual support as well. And then we have the first day of class. This is a very important piece, I think, of a successful implementation, where we send a nerd to as many courses as we possibly can to help introduce students to mastery learning in Alta and why it's different maybe from other different platforms that they might have used in the past. We find that it really sets students and instructors up for success because we're taking the pressure off of the instructor to be any sort of tech support. We want students to understand what they're getting into right from the first day of class. So those are a lot of fun for us as well. But this isn't the end of implementation. Like I said, this is really just the beginning, and it's an ongoing, continued sort of process with my team and Sarah's team. So right when the semester gets underway is when we start to do what we call a post-start check-in. Are students in and working? Are they off of the free trial? Have there been questions that popped up that we can answer for both students and for faculty? Then we move into midterms. We want to provide a series of value-added and data, against most challenging and least challenging learning objectives. We find that the best times to sort of check in with this data is right before midterms and finals, so that you can actually take action on the data that we provide. And then, of course, be able to personalize your instruction to students in those very critical times of the semester. And then finally, sort of a post check-in. What worked? What didn't? How can we improve? What feedback have we heard from students? These are all things that we want to partner with you and continually sort of communicate on this whole time. I've mentioned data along this whole way, so I actually wanted to give you guys sort of a sneak peek of some of the data that we do provide, with our goal being, of course, we want to check on student performance. We want to make sure they're engaged in the platform and happy with us. We want to report on their preparedness level. I mean, the key to this technology is that we're able to take students with varying skill levels and guide them to the same place, no matter where they started from. We want to take a look at how are we performing against your syllabus. What are the mastery levels that students are reaching so far or throughout the term? And then last, taking a look at overall student sentiment. So this is a report that on the next slide, I've broken it down into 4 slides here, but you can progress, John.
Can we back up a little? We've had a couple of questions come in that are worth addressing right now. Question 1, how long does the free trial last? And question 2 is, what is the cost for the student?
The free trial lasts 14 days from the time that they activate. So the first time they click on an assignment in Alta, their 14 days would start and they would get warnings along the way. What does it cost for students? Great question. So we're moving to a universal ISBN. So there's no more of a need for you guys to keep track of hundreds of ISBNs that are changing every couple of terms. We're going to have a single course ISBN that is $39.95, and then we also are implementing for fall an all-you-can-eat sort of access. It's called Access Pass, but I've been calling it all-you-can-eat for 2 years. For $79.95, a student can purchase an access that could potentially take them through as many math classes as they can take in 2 years for that single price.
And we also will continue to have a month-by-month subscription of $9.95.
Yeah, those $9.95 months are perfect for boot camps or short summer sessions, accelerated sessions. Yes, thank you. Great question. Any other questions there, John?
Nope, you may proceed.
We'll proceed. Okay, so this is what we call a looker report. I am a fanatic about providing this sort of data to our users. This is a math course that's running right now. You can see at the bottom of the screen, there's 200 plus students in this particular section. We have delivered throughout the course of this semester so far 91,000 questions and pieces of instructional material to these students, all in a personalized way. These students in this class have spent over 3,000 hours working, which equates to about 15.7 on average for each student. And of every student in this class, they're reaching an average mastery of 92%, which is fantastic. And then if we break out just the students that we have deemed as a struggling student, we're a little bit lower here at 88%, but that is still a fantastic number. We find that our national average is about 86% of struggling students going on to reach mastery. So this section is performing a little bit higher than our national average. Great. Next slide, please, John. And then we continue to sort of analyze the students within this section. So we personify students into 3 different buckets throughout the semester. So you can see here we've got about 23% of these 205 students are identified as an unfamiliar or maybe a struggling student. Don't worry, they don't see this personification. This is just on the back end. Then we've got about 38.77% of them identified as familiar or more advanced, and then the remainder of them as average. So then when you take a look at this data, we can see that for the 23% of this class that is personified as a struggling student, they are spending 61 minutes per assignment answering, over on the right there, 30 questions to reach mastery, right? Then you look at the average and familiar students, they are spending less than 36 minutes per assignment and answering less than 17 questions. So if I had used a static homework system and assigned, say, 20 questions to my entire class, 20 static questions, sure, my average and familiar students would have been just fine, but we would have left behind that 23% here that needed more work, remediation, and instruction to reach the same level as the other students in this class. So I think this really illustrates the power of adaptive learning and how we can kind of start students wherever they are, but still make sure that they reach that same level of mastery. Next slide, John. This is a report on the toughest and least challenging learning objectives. We will provide this to you a couple of times during the semester. We hope that you'll use the data here to review before a midterm or a final, or make sure you're looking at areas of weakness if you're trying to decide if maybe you wanted to cut some content from your Alta course next semester. Well, if nobody struggled with it, maybe it is an area that you could cut out. On the toughest learning objectives, we're looking for areas where, say, look at line 4, find an equation of the line given 2 points, right? We had, 39% of the class struggled with it, and they went on to reach mastery at a rate of 82%. That's pretty good. Or like a couple lines before that, 73% of the class struggled with identify rational numbers and irrational numbers, but 95% went on to reach mastery. So that tells us that we provided enough remediation and instructional material to give struggling students enough to reach mastery, right? Where we start to sort of check ourselves and watch this data from a national level is where we see that students are struggling and yet they're not reaching high levels of mastery. That can inform the decisions we make when it comes to adding content or adding more clarifying content and videos or questions to help students reach mastery. So this information is not only valuable to instructors, but also to us from a content development side. Next slide. Okay, and last but not least, we are always seeking feedback from students themselves. We want to make sure that they are enjoying their experience and they're learning from our courseware. So we will, at the end of each assignment, ask students what they thought. We don't want them to be mad at us, but when they are mad at us, we want to know. Maybe it's because the assignment times were too long, or maybe it's just they're stressed out during midterms or finals. But we are watching this to make sure that student sentiment is positive. This particular class, very, very good. We're always going to have some negative sentiment, right? Because students are going to complain about, homework in some way, shape, or form. But this particular class, this is fantastic. I always say I don't get nervous until the negative's up around 20% because of the fact that students are always going to complain a little bit about their homework. But we certainly share this information with you as well. And if we see something that's gone awry a little bit, that's a perfect opportunity for us to, again, get in in touch with the instructors and see what we can do to help. Okay, so that is it for data. If there's more questions, definitely please let us know, but I will pass you over to Sarah. She is a member of our client services virtual support team who will continue to support you and your students beyond what we do from an implementation standpoint.
Thanks, Amber. Yeah, so we really work like clockwork. Our solutions architects and our client success managers work very closely hand in hand. So a lot of this can be done both virtually as well as face-to-face, just depending on your needs and depending where we are at the time of year. But I wanted to walk through some of the key things that we offer, especially in terms of our virtual support. It's important to know that we are hands-on all the time. We consider ourselves giving white glove service to all of our clients. So one of the things that we often start with is leading product training. It's very difficult to get everyone in the room all at the same time. If you can, Amber's team is awesome at doing that kind of work. But for everyone that can't be all in the same place at the same time, we'll lead product and classroom implementation workshops. And with that, of course, we'll provide a ton of training collateral that just makes sure people remember everything that was mentioned. So it's not a quick memorize everything within this 1 hour situation. We follow up with the collateral that you need to keep informed and reinforce the learning. That can happen over webinars, or that could happen over phone calls, whatever makes sense. A lot of the faculty support also involves syllabus transition and then LMS integration. So that is sometimes not a one and done element. We'll, of course, work with the learning management system admins at every institution to make that higher level integration happen neatly and quickly. And then for each person, making sure that they know, for each instructor, how to get all of the course content from Alta into their learning management system is absolutely vital for success. So we talk through that, and of course, tons of implementation help on that in terms of resources to hand off as well. So if anything changes, if you need to update things, we're here to help in that process. The student progress that Amber just showed you, those awesome visuals around from Looker, we work with those as well. And throughout the semester, there might be information that needs to be pulled that you're interested in. I've worked with clients individually who really wanted to know how long students were spending per week. She wasn't sure whether the assignments were passed out correctly and whether she needed to have a couple of those easier assignments blocked into 1 week at a time. So we worked on the average time that students were working per week rather than all together. And that totally helped inform the way that she decided to structure the rest of the course. So pulling that kind of data is a big part of what we do as well, and then talking through that data with you, just like Amber showed on those reports. And then lastly, we also send out monthly communications for any new features. We are a really fast-moving company, so we listen to our clients when they're telling us what they need, and our students when they're telling us what they want as well, so that we can turn around new features and updates to the features we already have as quickly as possible. So we're not one of those enormous, very slow-moving companies that takes a long time to do those things. So within that, we want to make sure that everyone knows everything that's going on. As soon as we have a new feature, we tell you about it in the month ahead of time. We'll give you a heads up and say, hey, this really cool thing is coming in the next month. For example, we added copying a test this year, this last month. So that was something that we gave everyone the heads up around. We knew that you were asking for it, and now it's available in the platform. And with that, we'll send out things like videos on how to use it. You might hear my voice pop up every now and then around those. And then also, of course, documentation that we keep on our support site, which I'll tell you more about on the next slide. Thanks, John. So videos are a big part of training. We, of course, love to sit with people face-to-face, like Amber was telling you about. We also do a lot of webinar situations. We make meetings before the beginning of the semester. But if we can't find a time to sit together, and perhaps we know some autodidacts that want to be learning that on their own time and pacing themselves, we know that we have a lot of people like that. So we created these course building tutorial videos. These are all stored in a playlist on YouTube, and we iterate on them and change them all the time because we're always adding new features. So in these videos, they're between 2 and 4 minutes. Some of the trickier ones are about 4 minutes. You can hit pause and start as much as you want so that you can build your course out alone if that's the way you want to learn. We see these being used a ton with people like teaching assistants and adjuncts that are going to be doing some of these, but not all of these elements. So the coordinator might set up their course, and then we want to make sure that the people that need it have access to the training documentation. This is a super popular way of going about it for them as well. And then on the next slide, We'll talk about the in-product support, which is probably my personal favorite. I work very closely with our team that mans this. We have 24/7 live chat support. And there are a lot of reasons that a lot of companies don't have these things. For example, I would love for my insurance company to have a live chat support. But the point is that we want to make sure that we have your back at all times. So 24/7, you can click on the little speech bubble icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your Knewton screen, and you'll pop up a little chat support. You have a couple of options here. You'll see that little button that says New Conversation. And from there, you can start a new conversation with one of our live human beings in the country. And they are sometimes me. I'll be on there every now and then. You'll see my teammates on there. We'll help you through any challenges that you have, whether that's just pointing you to documentation that'll help you out. Sometimes it's a technical issue. Sometimes something has been set up incorrectly from the institution standpoint. We can get that fixed for you. If it's a technical issue, we escalate it quickly and get it solved within our average close time is 2 days. That's a tricky technical issue. And if it's just a simple question, we usually get that turned around and completed within a few minutes. Our maximum time that you're waiting for that chat support is 60 seconds. So we are very, very full-time online there. With an email, you can also send an email that goes directly to the same channel. And with that, we'll get a 30-minute response time back to you, explaining what we're working on or asking you for more information. And right within that screen, you'll also notice that you can find an answer for yourself. So there's a little search bar right there in the middle of that screen that says find an answer. That takes you directly over to our support site, which we'll see more about on our next slide. You can see you're ready for that, John. So our support site is my baby, and this is all of our FAQs and guides. So these are all constantly being updated. Every day we add new information to this and expand on information and keep updates going. Within here, there's a super simple to use search bar right at the top, so you can find the information you need yourself, or you can go and search through our documentation if you're not quite sure what you're looking for yet. Within those, we also have guides that you can download. So they're all live documents you can download and print them out, but I always say the best way is to just keep your bookmark on them so that you can always see the very latest version as we add new features and updates too. And I think that takes me to my last slide, which is our in-product tours. And this is a new feature that we are rolling out. They're starting out on the platform now. We're going to have a ton more by the time summer rolls around. These are basically click-throughs within the platform. So if you don't want to read any documentation before going through the product to start learning how to use it, this is a great way to get started. We'll guide you around the items that you need to know, both as an instructor and soon to be a student as well. So if you're a student, one of the first things you'll see will be, what is this course? What is the information I need to know on this course, and where should I go from here? And it guides you through the most important pieces. You can always X out of it. If you don't have time to go through a product tour right now, that's totally fine. We won't force you. You can leave it and relaunch it later when you do have more time to see that information. So look out for those. We have a couple already in platform that you might come across, but we'll be expanding a lot of those over the summer as well. And that wraps it up from my side, John.
Super. So now we're up to the, thank you, Sarah. Now we're up to the Q&A portion. For this section, you can either type your question in, or if you click the raise hand icon, we'll unmute your microphone and you can ask it live if you don't feel like typing, or if you'd like to inject some interactivity into this. We would love that. So you type your question in or raise your hand and we'll address your question. Oh, question. How do you communicate with adopters about system outages?
That's a good one. I can take that one. So we have a few ways. If it is a serious outage where we think that students have been affected or instructors maybe can't see something, we will always send that via a message to people that have been affected. Sometimes it's not everyone. We'll also post on our status page, which is linked from our Knewton site. And then in that little chat box widget thing that I showed you a few minutes ago with the support chat, we'll also surface a little notice right at the top of there saying what's going on. But all of that is to say we actually have a 99.99% uptime. So I have barely had to do this at all in the time that I've been at Knewton. Happens very rarely, but we do want to make sure we're always communicating those sort of things when it does happen.
Super, thank you. Any other questions? Please type them in or raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come in. So if after this session a question does strike you, please just hit reply to the email I'll be sending you with a link to the tape of this session, and we will answer your question on email. We can also set you up with a sandbox course or a more detailed demo of Alta, or hook you up with a user in your subject area if you'd like to have some peer-to-peer conversations about how Alta might work in courses. Oh, a question has come in. And as a thank you. Well, thank you for coming, Pamela. So thank you to our moderators. Thank you to our attendees. And we hope you all have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.